Assalamu alaikum students. Today I will tell you about the urinary system. What is the urinary system and what's the functions of urinary system? First, let's list a few of the functions of the urinary system. Number first, the kidneys are the main organ. They excrete nitrogenous waste and those include the creatinine, uric acid and urea. Number first function of the kidney is that the kidneys are the main organs. They excrete the nitrogenous waste that includes the creatinine, uric acid and the urea, and these are all nitrogen containing compounds that are the byproducts of metabolism. Okay. Number second function of the kidney is that the kidneys are the key organ for maintaining water balance and regulating and maintaining the blood volume. For example, they secrete the hormone, which is the EPO and renin. If you recall, an EPO is going to increase the erythrocytes reunion, is going to cause the formation of angiotensin II so that you can increase the blood pressure as needed. Another function of the kidneys are that they regulate the electrolyte balance. And that's to make sure that you have appropriate levels of calcium, potassium, etc. Interestingly, another function we can add on here is that it is used for the modification of drugs and deactivation of medications. Deactivation of drugs or medications. So when you are in allied health program, it might be important to recognize that how often you need to give a medication is going to depend on both liver, which we have talked about is modifying and deactivating medications, and also how much the kidneys alter a medication and then basically break it down or excrete it so that you need to give another dosage. Now let's use a different color pen and I'm going to tell you a few other key ideas about the kidneys. You can find a list. So there are the 4 primary functions, and to do them accomplish these are: the kidneys filter the blood. You can hear. The main function of the kidney is that the kidneys filter the blood and produce urine. Obviously, this is the most important function of kidney. So the waste ends up in the urine and then appropriate balance of fluid and salt etc. goes back in the blood. Okay, the pH of the urine is about 6, which is acidic. Okay, and this is acidic, so that has a key role in inhibiting pathogens. and from growing in the urethra, that grow in the urethra. The pathogens grow in urethra. So it inhibits the pathogens that are growing in the urethra. Since the urine is flushing through there several times a day, and so that you can, if you are not urinating very frequently, you're not having that flush of acidic urine come through, and pathogens are more likely to grow. If the pH is too high, so you conclude that if the pH is too high, okay, if the pH is too high, then what happens? It is a clue that you have a UTI. It shows that you have a UTI. UTI is a urinary tract infection. If the pH is too high, means too basic or alkaline, then you have a UTI. Okay. So pathogens could grow, or if pathogens begin growing in the urinary tract infection, they actually secrete products that make the pH more basic. So it can also be a negative cycle where UTI causes the urine to become more and more alkaline, more relatively more. Okay, so that's one key idea, is this acidic nature of the urine. And then another key idea we are going to come back to numerous times is that the blood cells, like another key point is that blood cells, okay, you have a blood cells plus proteins Blood cells includes the white blood cells, RBCs, red blood cells, platelets, and the protein includes the albumin, fibrinogen, angiotensinogen, etc. or hormones. For example, these things should never be filtered. These things, blood cells plus proteins, should never be filtered. These things should never be filtered so that they stay in blood. They do not enter the tube system or filtering apparatus of the kidneys. And if you are finding blood cells or proteins in the urine, meaning that they were being filtered, that is a sign of kidney damage. Okay. If you see both things in urine, this is a clue for sign of kidney damage. Okay, so these things like blood cells and proteins should never be filtered and should never comes in the urine. If they come, that this means that your kidney is being damaged. So you can see that you get clues. So if they are, and then this is a clue of kidney damage or infection, then filtering apparatus has been damaged and now stuff is getting through. Okay, that's a clue for kidney damage or some infection. Kidney damage or some infection. Kidney damage or infection. Another key point is that glucose should be completely reabsorbed. Glucose should be completely reabsorbed Glucose should be completely reabsorbed. None comes in urine. None comes in urine. Okay, glucose never be in the urine. Notice I didn't say that it is not filtered because it is, but even though it's filtered, it is reabsorbed. So well put, it completely reabsorbed back into the blood from filtering apparatus. And if it is comes in urine, that glucose comes in urine, that this is a clue for blood sugar that is too much high. If it comes, means your blood sugar is high and you got a disease which is called diabetes or diabetes. Okay. If your glucose comes in urine and is not completely reabsorbed, this means that you have a blood sugar, high blood sugar, and you are suffering from diabetes. Now we are going to label different blood vessels of the kidneys. The different blood vessels of the kidneys that sends blood to the filtering apparatus. So we have been talking on and on about the kidneys are filtering blood well. What they have to do is go from by abdominal aorta. At the top is, now I'm gonna color it with the orange marker. This is what you called aorta, abdominal aorta. Okay, this is the abdominal aorta. This is the place where the blood comes inside the kidney, and then blood comes from the abdominal aorta towards renal artery. This is a renal artery. You can see that this is a renal artery. From the abdominal aorta, the blood comes inside to renal artery. This is a renal artery. It's going to segment. Now it's going to segment into 5 or 8 smaller arteries. So great name for that, which are, that's the abdominal aorta. That are called, what that are called? They are called segmental arteries. What are the segmental arteries? These are the segmental arteries. These 5 arteries are called the segmental arteries. You can see here, these are the segmental arteries. 5 segmental arteries. Okay, these are the segmental arteries. Five segmental artery. Totally you have a 5 segmental artery. You can see here that these are the 5 segmental arteries. Now, and then next is going to go between the lobes of the kidney. So there's a typically about 5 to 8 lobes of a kidney. So each of those lobes has artery that goes on either side of the 2 interlobar arteries. These are the lobes of the arteries. These are the 2 interlobar arteries, 1 and 2. You can see here that I am marking it 1 and 2 interlobar artery. These are called the interlobar arteries. Interlobar arteries, I am marking it with the green color. Okay, these are the interlobar arteries. Interlobar arteries. This is with the green color marker. Okay. You have about 10 of them, and notice every time it splits, the blood vessels would be getting smaller. Now you get the, each of these interlobar arteries actually arcs around the top of each lobe and makes them very smaller. You can see here that this is a smaller interlobar lobes, which you can call the arcuate arteries. These are the arcuate arteries. Okay, I am marking it with blue color, arcuate artery. This is the arcuate artery. Then arcuate artery Now the blood vessels become very tiny and hard to see, and top of each lobe is the arteries that radiate outside the kidney and called the cortical radiate artery. These are the cortical radiate artery, these smaller arteries. I'm gonna color it. These smaller arteries are called, what is called? Cortical radiate artery. These are called the cortical radiate artery. These are the cortical radiate artery, and these tiny arteries helps in the blood pressure regulation, which then enters into many afferent arteries. These enters into many afferent arteries and helps in the blood pressure regulation. These helps in blood pressure regulation. Helps in blood pressure regulation. And another important function is that it constricts during fight and flight response, that reduces the blood flow, and filtering in kidney, and systematically it increases the blood pressure, and systematically it increases the, what it increases? It increases the blood pressure. It increases the blood pressure. Then it goes on to the glomerulus. Then this afferent arterioles goes up down the glomerulus filtration bed, goes on to the glomerulus filtration bed, which is a site of filtration, Then the unfiltered blood, goes down. Unfiltered blood goes down into the efferent arteriole. Efferent, okay, it's pronounced with the E. Efferent arteriole. Then goes down to the peritubular capillaries, which then radiates into, like this, radiates into the cortical radiate artery. It goes down to the cortical radiate artery, it goes up in the cortical radiate vein, in the arcuate vein, interlobar vein, up into the segmental vein, up into the renal vein, and up into the vena cava. Up into the vena cava. Okay, what I'm going to show you that, so in kidney, the oxygenated blood that is filtered with waste enters kidney by renal artery. It goes up into the segmental artery by the interlobar vein. It goes up. Okay, you can see that in the microscope, the afferent arteriole goes into the glomerulus capillary bed where the filtration occurs. The afferent arteriole goes down into the glomerulus filtration where the filtration occurs. The afferent arteriole goes down into the glomerulus filtration bed, which is the site of filtration. Then the unfiltered blood goes down to the efferent arteriole, which goes down into the peritubular capillaries, and then peritubular capillaries goes up to the cortical radiate artery, which goes up to the arcuate artery, which goes up the interlobar arteries, which goes up in the segmental artery, then renal artery, and then abdominal cava through vena cava. Now you can see that the peritubular capillaries, in the peritubular capillaries, the reabsorption and absorption occurs, and then blood will return back to the cortical radiate vein, and there is the arcuate vein. Like you can see that the blood enters into the abdominal aorta, which then goes into the renal artery, then goes into the segmental arteries. There are 5 segmental arteries, which goes down into the interlobal arteries. You can see here with the green marker, the interlobal arteries with the green marker, then goes up into the arcuate artery, and then into the cortical radiate artery. These tiny capillaries are the arcuate artery and the cortical radiate artery, where the reabsorption occurs. Here these tiny capillaries, reabsorption occurs, then it goes blood, then it carry the deoxygenated blood or waste blood from the cortical radiate vein to the interlobar vein, then the segmental vein, then the renal vein, and then the vena cava, and throughout the kidney. Here is the urinary system. You can see these are the functions of the urinary system. Then you have some clues about the urinary system, that the kidney filter blood and produce urine. The pH of the urine should be 6, which is the acidic. If it is not, then it causes infection in the urethra, which is called the UTI, urinary tract infections. The blood cells and proteins should never be filtered and should never comes in blood. If it comes in the urine, then it is a sign of kidney damage. Then glucose should be filled completely reabsorbed. None comes in the urine. If it comes, then it means that you have a high blood sugar and you have the diabetes. Then you can see here the whole cycle of the kidney filtration. This is the kidney filtration. You can see here and down. Thank you so much.